Mega Man, the Blue Bomber, the Azure Annihilator. Okay, no one calls him that last one, but let's proceed. In these games, Mega Man, faces off against 6 or 8 boss enemies called Robot Masters before ultimately confronting the evil Dr. Wily.
Dr. Wowie.
Dr. Wowie. The Robot Masters sport names like Fireman, Woodman, and Airman, with their appearance and weapons themed accordingly. Fireman, as you might imagine, is on fire and shoots fire. Woodman's a log with a face, and Airman's a sentient air conditioning unit. You get the idea. Each of the Robot Masters lord over a domain fitting their theme. Plantman's in his forest preserve, Snakeman's in his, snake place, I guess? Skullman's in his bone palace, the lucky bastard, etc., etc. Each of these stages has a unique piece of music which helps give them their own particular flavor. For the composers, this must have been an interesting assignment. How does one evoke fire in music, or wood, or air? In this video, we'll examine a selection of Mega Man stage themes to see just how the composers went about doing this, and on the limited hardware of the NES, no less. I'm ProkoCat, welcome to VGMazing, my series on video game music appreciation. First up, let's discuss Bubble Man's stage and music from Mega Man 2. This stage sees Mega Man tangling with frogs, shrimp, and other aquatic-themed robot enemies underwater. Naturally, it was composer Takashi Tataishi's goal to make audible this marine setting in his music. He went about this in a number of ways, starting off with a bubbly, rising and falling music in the intro. This motif floats along in the background of most of the track, elegantly buoying the melody that follows. The central tune is fluid, with smooth, stepwise motion between most notes. Tataishi gives this melody a particularly evocative color by layering 2 identical voices, and then displacing one of them rhythmically by the slightest bit. The result is a reverberant effect that almost makes the melody sound like it's underwater, especially with that rippling vibrato on the ends of long notes. Composers have used similar techniques to evoke water in music for centuries, but why is it that they sound watery to us? Some of this comes from conditioning. We build associations by hearing patterns in musical behavior being paired with a thing or idea. The rest is analogy. Water is fluid, so it's intuitive to suggest it through singable, flowing melodies. The thing to appreciate here is that Tataishi cashed in on his understanding of both conditioning and the way we draw analogy in music to produce a track that gels with our musical imagination of water. So cool! Mega Man 1. This is where it all began. Monami Matsume's score isn't as remembered today as that of Mega Man 2, but it did lay the groundwork for what would follow. In Elecman's music, one of the few stages in a major key, we can hear some rather charming allusions to the theme of electricity. The intro pulses with low, resonant energy, like a machine being turned on, charging up before the melody enters. The phrases of the tune are interrupted by zappy, quick, downward gestures in the highest voice, a big contrast with the more sustained material below. This dichotomy illustrates electrical energy, defined by the steady way currents power our machines, but also the little shocks we get if we're careless around outlets. Something that Mega Man fans love to bring up is how Elecman's stage music sounds an awful lot like Faithfully by Journey. And sure, the very opening does, using a similar repeating melodic and rhythmic motive over a descending bass line. However, the two pieces diverge pretty quickly from there. This melodic shape, defined by a double neighbor note, is actually very common, and one can find examples of it everywhere from Bach to REM. Now, from the 5th installment in the series, it's
Starman!
This Robot Master has occupied a space station that Mega Man must infiltrate. Making this difficult is the low gravity, the asteroid swarms, and the Mets with jetpacks. Look at them! They're wearing helmets inside their helmets. Composer Mari Yamaguchi chose to evoke this celestial setting by making reference to technology and to sci-fi cinema scoring tropes. The intro to this track sees our 3 pitched voices beeping and booping, sounding like sophisticated orbital technology. The chord progression here also sounds a little out of this world. The vacillating harmonies used would be described as very distantly related by music theorists, an alien coupling of D major and E flat major. The melody that follows leaps around in an angular way and includes an interesting downward portamento at the end of a phrase. This sounds like a nod to the slippery theremin music that we associate with cheesy alien movies. Lastly, right before the loop, we hear a disorienting chromatic gesture hurtling through space, like Mega Man might if he jumps too high.
That's what we need out in the stars.
Way up in the clouds with the birds, the breeze, and the rocket-powered pandas is Windman. Windman hails from Mega Man 6, a game with a not insignificant amount of racist stereotyping. This game is also notable for the introduction of the Rush power and jet adapters. Whereas in previous games one could bounce on or ride Rush, in Mega Man 6 you can wear him like some horrific robot fursuit. Ooh woo! Ooh woo! Ooh. To suggest Windman's loftiness and the bright blue skies of his domain, composer Yuko Takahara set the music higher and chose a major key area. The bass voice isn't as deep in most other tracks, giving it this weightless, elevated quality. This is aided by a melody with lots of ascending shapes, taking our ears higher and higher. Takahara is capitalizing on the way we make musical analogy between pitch space and physical space. We tend to associate high sounds with things up in the air, and low sounds with the mundane and grounded. My favorite bit of this track is the B section, which sees the percussion lighten up to communicate a halftime feel. This metric change makes the music feel less weighed down, like we've just left the Earth and are soaring. For this brief time, the incessant forward push of Mega Man's musical ethos relaxes, and we can enjoy the clarity this altitude offers us. Is it getting hot in here, or is it just Heatman? Heatman! Another of the robot masters from the beloved Mega Man 2, Heatman wields the power of flame and has a body designed after a Zippo lighter. In this children's game. Keep it classy, Capcom. The music of Heatman's stage does a great job suggesting the sweltering environment. In general, it sits much lower than the other pieces on the soundtrack, and the lowest voices are the most active as well. That gurgling bass line almost seems like a musical analogy to the visuals of the stage, with molten rock flowing beneath Mega Man's feet. With so much focus on the bass and percussion, the track has a sort of primal quality that's common in pieces meant to evoke fire. It's nearly the textural inverse of Windman's music way up there in the clouds. With Heatman's heavy groove, we're deep underground with the liquid metal of the mantle. Being the shortest of the stage themes from Mega Man 2 at just 25 seconds before looping, this track has a vital urgency to it. Short-form music like this quickly repeating creates anxiety. It makes us wonder just how long poor Mega Man can take the heat. Run, jump, get out of there before you melt, little guy! Next, let's discuss Sparkman, Mega Man 3's second pointiest robot. As you might be able to guess from his name, Sparkman is another electricity-themed enemy. Despite the similar theme, his stage music contrasts with that of Elecman. Sparkman's stage music is quite a bit faster, features much more complex rhythms, and is in a more severe-sounding minor key area. Sparkman's domain is a massive power center with floors and walls lined with flickering lights. The busyness of the visuals demands a similar musical analogy, and we get that in the form of a repetitious middle voice and a bass that just won't quit. The continuous spinning energy of the intro's highest voice calls to mind currents of electricity. The phrases in this track's A section both end with a striking upward chromatic gesture. It really stands out in this otherwise very diatonic piece. This, to me, evokes a machine charging up or something being kicked into a higher gear. This gesture has an affirmative, energizing quality, like it could just about be a sound effect Sparkman's power station itself is producing. Dustman's stage from Mega Man 4 is chilling. It's a dark, spooky machine dump where the very floors you walk on are compressed metal detritus. Mega Man must survive getting squished by an enormous trash compactor, leap across platforms that seem to eerily reconstitute themselves out of the debris, and ultimately face down Dustman himself in a blazingly hot room framed by incinerators. Dustman's stage music seems to seize on the theme of waste and deterioration, especially in its opening bars. Those higher voices with their wavering dynamics sound like something being worn away, and the sandy white noise percussion suggests little particles scattering or getting swept up. Soon we lock into a more aggressive groove that seems to evoke the processing equipment seen in the background. The melody of this track is defined by descending shapes, all of which keep with the theme of decay. The most evocative gesture, though, is when the middle voice plays a long, downward glissando near the climax of the track. Its effect is grim and strange. It makes one wonder what Mega Man thinks seeing all these discarded appliances and machines around. Junkyards like this one take on new meaning in a world with sentient robots. When Mega Man finally sees those remains being incinerated, he must feel he's in hell. I'd say Dustman's the devil in this metaphor, but I mean, come on. Dude's got a vacuum cleaner on his head. I hope you enjoyed this discussion of how composers for the early Mega Man games made audible the themes of the Robot Masters and their stages. I focus on the original 6 because it's incredible that the composers were able to create such specific effects without the benefit of a broader tone color palette. The NES Mega Man aesthetic is iconic and often imitated, even by yours truly. But did you know most of this music is by women? Video game music composition is a field largely dominated by men, but the majority of Capcom staff composers in the 80s and 90s were female. With 4 of these 6 Mega Man games scored entirely by women and the other 2 being collaborations between a male and female composer pair, it's fair to say Mega Man's musical voice is female. And honestly, that rules. Do you have a favorite Mega Man stage theme? Let me know in the comments below. I think mine might be Needleman's stage from Mega Man 3, but I just gotta shout out Mine Fujii's score for Mega Man 4. I come back to it again and again because it's just so imaginative and gosh darn weird. As great as these stage themes are, it's no secret that Mega Man games save some of their best music for last. In a future video, we'll storm Dr. Wowie's fortress and discuss how the Mega Man composers create anticipation, anxiety, and even melancholy in their endgame. We may even discuss that most covered and beloved of tracks, Wily Stage 1 from Mega Man 2. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more in the future, consider subscribing. You can follow me on Twitter at ProkoCat for updates on the next video and to hear some of the music I write. Thanks for watching!